The disciples gathered at the monastery, their minds weighed down by questions about fear and its oppressive power. Ananda, the youngest disciple, approached the Buddha, his voice quivering with uncertainty and longing for guidance. "Blessed teacher," Ananda began, "I am paralyzed by fear, unable to move forward in life's journey." The Buddha's gaze softened, his eyes reflecting boundless compassion and understanding for the struggles of his disciple. "Ananda, fear is a shadow that grows larger when you flee from it, but diminishes when you face it." The disciples listened attentively, their hearts yearning for insight to conquer their own invisible chains of fear. The Buddha gestured toward a pond, where the water shimmered with the reflections of the setting sun. "Tell me, Ananda," the Buddha continued, "when you see your face in the water, is that face truly you?" Ananda hesitated, considering the question deeply before answering. "No, teacher, it is but a reflection, not my true self." The Buddha nodded, the corners of his lips curving into a serene smile. "And so it is with fear, my dear disciple," he said. "Fear is a reflection of your doubts, not your essence." The disciples exchanged glances, the weight of the Buddha's words sinking into their minds like seeds into fertile soil. "But teacher," Ananda protested gently, "fear feels so real, as if it defines my very existence." The Buddha reached down to the ground, scooping a handful of earth into his open palm. "Does this earth define the mountain from which it came, Ananda?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. Ananda observed the soil, then shook his head, realizing the profound truth concealed within the simple act. "Fear, like this handful of earth, is but a fragment, a momentary part of your life's vast landscape," the Buddha explained. "Yet, to hold on to it is to limit the view of the mountain's grandeur." The disciples murmured among themselves, their understanding deepening with every analogy the Buddha shared. Ananda asked again, his brow furrowed with doubt, "Teacher, what if the fear is failure? What if it consumes my efforts and taints my purpose?" The Buddha's smile remained, unshaken by the complexity of the query. As he motioned the group to sit closer, "Come, let me tell you a story," the Buddha said, his voice flowing like a gentle stream through their hearts. The disciples leaned forward, their attention captivated by the promise of a tale that would illuminate their path. In a distant village, there lived a potter named Jayananda, whose craft was admired for its beauty and precision. The Buddha began. Jayananda aspired to create a vessel that would be unparalleled in its perfection, a masterpiece of his lifetime. The disciples listened intently, the story weaving itself into their consciousness like a thread into a tapestry. Yet each time Jayananda set to work, his hands trembled with fear, for he believed failure would mark him forever. The Buddha continued. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, Jayananda's kiln remained empty, his aspirations smothered by dread. The Buddha paused, allowing the gravity of the potter's predicament to settle upon the disciples' minds. One day, an old traveler appeared at Jayananda's workshop, seeking shelter and companionship on his weary journey, the Buddha said. The traveler observed Jayananda's unyielding despair and asked him, "Why do you hesitate, friend, when the world awaits your craft?" The disciples nodded, their curiosity piqued by the traveler's wisdom and timing, symbolic of chance encounters in life. Jayananda confessed his fears, lamenting that failure would bring him disgrace and diminish his worth in the eyes of others. The Buddha elaborated. The traveler smiled knowingly and extended his trembling hands, revealing scars etched into his skin like tales of persistence. "These hands," the traveler said, "have failed more times than they have succeeded, but through each failure, I found my strength." The Buddha's voice grew softer, imbued with the resonance of the traveler's courage and the potter's silent contemplation. Inspired by the traveler's words, Jayananda realized that fear of failure was a cage of his own making. Not an eternal truth, the Buddha explained. He decided to create his masterpiece. Not to prove his worth, but to express the beauty of his spirit. The disciples nodded in unison, their hearts moved by the potter's journey from fear to freedom, resonant with their own struggles. And what happened to Jayananda? Teacher? Ananda asked, his voice eager to know the conclusion of the inspiring tale. The Buddha placed his hand on Ananda's shoulder, his touch light as a whisper yet firm as a guiding star. Jayananda's vessel was not perfect, for perfection is an illusion, but it was his truth, his fearless expression, the Buddha said. And in that, Ananda, he found liberation, a peace unshaken by the judgments or praises of others. The disciples sat in silence, their minds alight with the profound simplicity of the lesson woven into the potter's tale. The Buddha gazed at the horizon, his eyes reflecting the endless expanse of the teachings yet to be explored. Ananda, the Buddha said, breaking the silence, to fear failure is to miss the essence of the journey. Courage lies in embracing it. The disciples meditated on the Buddha's words, the echoes of his wisdom harmonizing with the natural rhythm of the universe. Fear will visit you, as night visits the day, the Buddha continued. But remember, it is the cycle that brings growth. Ananda inhaled deeply, his soul invigorated by the truth that fear and failure were but fleeting moments, not eternal burdens. Blessed teacher, Ananda said, his voice steadied by newfound resolve. I will face my fear as the potter faced his kiln. The Buddha nodded, his silent approval resonating with the unwavering determination ignited within his disciple's heart. Then, Ananda, the Buddha said, you shall discover that fear is not your enemy, but your most enlightening companion. As the evening enveloped the monastery, the teachings of courage in the face of fear lingered in the air. The disciples dispersed, each carrying with them the seeds of wisdom to sow in the fertile fields of their own lives. And in the quietude of the night, Ananda found solace not in the absence of fear, but in the strength to walk alongside it. The teachings of the enlightened one became their beacon, illuminating the path toward a life unshackled by the chains of apprehension. Thus, the story of the potter and the traveler lived on in their hearts, a testament to the transformative power of courage. And so the lesson resonated through generations, like ripples on a pond that never cease to expand outward. Another day, another gathering beneath the sacred Bodhi tree, where disciples sought wisdom from the Buddha on their varied life struggles. Ananda sat closest to the teacher, his heart still contemplating the lessons shared the day before about fear and courage. Blessed teacher, Ananda began, his voice steady but still carrying traces of uncertainty. How does one embrace fear as a companion? The Buddha gazed at the horizon, his expression serene yet profound, reflecting the depth of wisdom he wished to impart. Fear, Ananda, is like a river, the Buddha said, that flows whether you choose to cross it or avoid it. The disciples leaned in closer, eager to hear more, their hearts yearning to grasp the essence of the enlightened one's teachings. When you understand the river, its currents and depths, you learn to navigate it without being swept away, the Buddha continued. Ananda's brow furrowed slightly, his mind pondering the metaphor, seeking clarity in the simplicity of the Buddha's wisdom. But teacher, Ananda asked, what if the current is too strong and the fear overwhelms me? Despite my understanding of it? The Buddha pointed toward the mountains in the distance, their peaks reaching toward the heavens, steadfast and unwavering. Each mountain has weathered storms, Ananda, yet it stands because its foundation is firm, unshaken by external forces, he said. To embrace fear is to strengthen your foundation, to build resolve that endures even the fiercest of currents, the Buddha added. The disciples nodded, their minds absorbing the teachings like soil soaking up rain after a long drought. "Let me share a story," the Buddha said, his voice gentle yet commanding. As the disciples settled into quiet anticipation, in a faraway land, there lived a shepherd named Vikrama, whose days were spent tending sheep in the open meadows. He began. Vikrama was known for his wisdom and courage, yet within him lay a fear that often shadowed his brightest moments. The Buddha continued. Ananda and the others listened intently, their imaginations painting vivid scenes of the shepherd and his unspoken fears. One evening, as Vikrama returned home, he found his village trembling with fear of a beast rumored to haunt nearby woods. The Buddha said. The villagers gathered in panic, their hearts heavy with dread, their minds consumed by thoughts of impending danger. He elaborated. The Buddha paused, observing the expressions of the disciples. As they grappled with the gravity of the villagers' predicament, Vikrama, though afraid, resolved to face the beast and understand its nature. Rather than succumb to fear's paralysis, the Buddha continued. With torch in hand, he ventured into the woods. Guided by courage that outweighed his fear, the Buddha said, his voice steady and melodic. The disciples exchanged glances, marveling at Vikrama's bravery, a reflection of their own struggles and aspirations. The woods were dense and foreboding, the silence broken only by the distant howl of the wind and the rustle of leaves. The Buddha described. Each step Vikrama took was a step deeper into his fear, yet he pressed forward, his resolve unshaken. He added. The Buddha paused again, allowing the tension of the tale to settle into the hearts of his listeners. Eventually, Vikrama reached a clearing, where he encountered the beast, a large, majestic lion with eyes that mirrored the night sky. The Buddha said. The lion roared, its voice echoing through the woods, a sound both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The Buddha elaborated. Ananda's breath quickened as he imagined Vikrama standing before the beast, his courage tested beyond measure. Instead of fleeing, Vikrama knelt before the lion, his gaze steady and his heart open to the moment. The Buddha continued. He realized the beast was not a threat but a teacher, a reflection of his own fear made manifest. The Buddha said. The lion, sensing Vikrama's calm, approached and sat beside him, its presence no longer a source of fear. He added. The disciples sighed collectively, their minds alight with the realization of fear's transformative potential when faced with courage. Vikrama returned to his village, his spirit transformed, his courage no longer dimmed by the shadow of fear. The Buddha concluded. He taught his villagers to embrace fear as a guide, not an enemy, and their hearts grew stronger with each passing day. The Buddha said. Ananda spoke, his voice filled with wonder. Teacher, how did Vikrama's courage dispel the fear of an entire village? The Buddha smiled gently, the wisdom of his answer already woven into his earlier teachings yet ready to be shared again. Courage, Ananda, is as contagious as fear. For when one person stands firm, others find strength in their example. The Buddha explained. Fear fades when illuminated by the light of understanding, as darkness dissolves when dawn breaks. He added. The disciples sat in quiet reflection, their hearts softened and strengthened by the story of Vikrama and his fearless encounter. Ananda, the Buddha said, breaking the silence, courage is not born in comfort but in trials. It flourishes when faced with adversity. Ananda nodded, his resolve growing with every word, his fear losing its grip as he embraced the teachings of his teacher. Fear is fleeting, Ananda, a moment in time that can never define the infinity of your spirit. The Buddha continued. To understand fear is to free yourself from its control, to walk forward with courage as your companion. He added. As the day turned to night, the disciples meditated on the Buddha's words, their hearts steady with the strength of newfound wisdom. Ananda gazed at the stars, their light unwavering and eternal, a reflection of the courage he sought within himself. The Buddha's teachings lingered in the air, resonating through the minds of his disciples, guiding them toward the middle way. And so the story of Vikrama lived on, a testament to the power of courage to transform fear into wisdom and growth. The disciples dispersed, their spirits uplifted by the profound truths shared beneath the sacred Bodhi tree. The Buddha remained, his presence a beacon of light, his teachings rippling outward like waves on a vast ocean. Another day, another quiet gathering beneath the ancient Bodhi tree, where disciples sought the Buddha's wisdom on overcoming fear through courage. Ananda approached the teacher, his heart eager yet calm, the lessons of the past days resonating deeply within his spirit. "Blessed teacher," Ananda began, his voice steady but filled with curiosity, "how can courage help others find their own strength?" The Buddha looked at Ananda, his gaze profound, his eyes carrying the infinite wisdom of countless teachings and experiences. "Ananda," the Buddha said, "courage shared is like a flame that lights another lamp. It grows brighter without diminishing itself." The disciples leaned closer, their anticipation building as the Buddha began weaving another story to illuminate their understanding. "Let me tell you about Dharmika, a farmer whose life was transformed by an act of courage that inspired an entire village," the Buddha began. Dharmika lived in a small village surrounded by fertile fields and towering mountains. A place of quiet beauty and hard work, the Buddha said. One year, the village faced a terrible drought. The rivers dried, and the crops withered under the relentless heat, he continued. Ananda and the other disciples listened attentively, picturing the struggles of the villagers in their minds. Feeling their desperation, the villagers gathered to discuss their predicament, their hearts heavy with fear for their families and the future, the Buddha explained. Dharmika, though just a farmer, stood and spoke. "If we do nothing, the drought will defeat us entirely," the Buddha said. His words struck a chord. Yet the villagers hesitated, paralyzed by doubt, unsure of how to face such adversity. The Buddha elaborated. Dharmika resolved to act, his courage compelling him to dig a well. Despite the risk of failure and ridicule, the Buddha said. Day after day, Dharmika labored under the scorching sun. His hands blistered but his determination unwavering, the Buddha continued. The disciples exchanged glances, their hearts stirred by the farmer's perseverance in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Slowly, his courage inspired others, and they joined him, their fears replaced by the shared strength of collective effort, the Buddha said. The villagers worked together, their unity born of Dharmika's resolve, their hope rekindled by his fearless example, he added. Finally, after weeks of toil, water burst forth from the earth, a miracle born of courage and perseverance, the Buddha explained. Ananda exhaled deeply, his mind contemplating the farmer's journey and the ripple effect of his courage on the entire village. Dharmika's act of bravery not only saved the village but taught them the power of courage to overcome fear, the Buddha continued. Ananda, courage is not merely a tool for oneself. It is a gift that transforms the lives of others, the Buddha said. When you share your courage, you inspire others to find their own, and together you create strength far greater than fear, he explained. The disciples nodded in unison, the profound simplicity of the Buddha's words sinking deeply into their hearts and minds. Ananda asked, his voice thoughtful, Teacher, what if someone's fear is so overwhelming they cannot find courage within themselves? The Buddha looked toward the horizon, his expression serene yet determined, his mind contemplating the depth of the question. Ananda, the Buddha began. Courage can be borrowed, like a spark from another's flame, until their own light begins to shine. Sometimes, the simplest act, a word, a gesture, a presence, can ignite courage in a heart consumed by fear, the Buddha said. The disciples reflected on the power of kindness and support in creating courage within those who feel trapped by fear. Courage is like the sun that rises each day, illuminating the darkness without effort, simply by being itself, the Buddha said. Ananda inhaled deeply, the truth of the metaphor filling his spirit with calm and clarity, dispelling his remaining doubts. Blessed teacher, Ananda said, his voice steady and grateful, your teachings have given me the strength to share courage with others. The Buddha nodded, his silent approval resonating with the light of understanding ignited within his disciple's heart. Ananda, the Buddha said, walk with courage, and others will follow. Lead not with force but with the strength of example. As the day turned to dusk, the disciples meditated on the Buddha's words, their spirits lifted by the power of his teachings. Ananda gazed at the sky, its colors shifting like the endless wisdom imparted by the enlightened one's compassionate guidance. The Buddha's presence remained, a beacon of truth and courage, his teachings rippling outward like waves in a boundless ocean. The disciples dispersed, their hearts carrying the seeds of wisdom to sow courage in their own lives and those of others. And in the quietude of the night, Ananda found solace in the understanding that courage was not a solitary endeavor. The teachings of the enlightened one lived on, guiding generations to walk the path of fearlessness and compassion. Thus, Dharmika's story became eternal, a testament to the transformative power of courage shared among kindred spirits. The disciples returned each day, their hearts ready to receive more wisdom beneath the sacred Bodhi tree. And so the Buddha's teachings resonated forever, illuminating the hearts of all who sought the strength to overcome fear. Siddhartha's words became etched in their hearts, their minds, their very beings, a constant source of solace and strength. Ananda closed his eyes, feeling the stream's embrace, the universe's gentle pull. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.